interviewing Rae Yoon of Rae Foods, but I'm going to let Ron Litboff, who's here also from A&R Specialty Foods, talk a little bit about Rae and introduce her as well.
Good to see you, Jeff.
Nice to see you again.
Always
Ron.
fun, always fun. I am so thrilled to introduce you to Rae and her line of Rae Foods. She has really knocked the ball out of the park with this one. She started just in February. She's already on the shelves at a number of retail locations. It's growing pretty quick. We're looking at food service and retail, and this is, as Rae will tell you, absolutely great tasting dairy, egg, soy, and peanut-free muffins. And you'll be able to find them in your freezer section, keep them in the freezer at home, give them to the kids, throw them in your briefcase. They're absolutely outstanding. Jeff, you had them. They taste great. So
they taste better than great.
Yeah, yeah. And wait till you hear what's in them. So absolutely my pleasure to introduce the founder of Rae Foods, Rae Yoon.
Thank you, Jeff.
Hi, Rae.
Hello, how are you?
I say with a mouthful of brownie.
Thank you for having me, guys.
It's our pleasure. Why don't you tell us about why you started the business?
Okay, I started the business because in 2009 I was diagnosed with a dairy allergy, and a few months after that my son had a dairy sensitivity as well. I have always wanted to start a business, a food business. I grew up with my family who've always owned businesses and restaurants, so it wasn't unusual for me to think about starting a company. And when the idea of a dairy-free company popped up into my head, I thought, why not? And it's a story that I have. It's something that I wanted to create because I have a dairy allergy. I wanted to create products out there that I think will be tasty and delicious and good for you.
So it's not that you were trained as a classical chef, or a baker, but you had a family necessity that sort of forced you down this category?
Correct. I've always loved to cook. I've always entertained and had people over. I wouldn't say I was a huge baker. Baking sort of, if someone told me now that I would own a baking company or that I would start a line of muffins, I would have said there's no way. Baking was not something I enjoyed doing before, but because I was diagnosed with a dairy allergy, I wanted to come up with products for my kids for their snacks and for their lunches. And my daughter's birthday was coming up in September of last year. And so I was like, well, most people bring in cupcakes, so I figured, well, why not I bring in some muffins? And that's exactly how this whole thing happened. And then my daughter and her friends all loved it. And then she's like, Mommy, you should sell these muffins. And that's what happened. And then,
well, I'm already down two cupcakes. What did I eat?
You had a Gorilla Nana, which contains fresh bananas, kale, and flax seeds.
Right. And
then the Choco Champ, which is grated zucchini, cocoa powder, and flax seeds.
It went down very smooth. I enjoyed it. That's the problem. Too smooth. Now, were you an entrepreneur before this?
No. Well, yes and no. So I've always, like I said, I've always wanted to start a company. And so sometime in the 80s, I actually started a personal chef service company. When I was working for a company called TJX Companies in the strategic planning department, and I was working that corporate 9-to-5 job, and I was feeling a little bored and
9 to 5. Where do you get that job?
Well, not anymore, but this was in the 80s, remember? And so I was like, well, why not start a personal chef business? And so I actually started targeting high-tech companies when high-tech companies was really big back then in Kendall Square, and I would go into their lunch times and bring in some samples of food that I've cooked, and I would deliver the meals to them weekly. And so eventually I sort of grew, and I quit my job and I started this little personal chef service. But I only did that for a short period of time because, one, I didn't have a lot of seed money at that time, and personal chef service wasn't huge then. No one really knew much about it. Obviously now it's a pretty big venture.
So do you have a comment